In this video, we're talking through 5 ideas and compositional techniques to help level up your street portraits. And y'all know me, there's gonna be a lot more than just 5, so stick around. My name is Pi, and I'm one of the founders of Lynn and Jersa Photography and SLRLounge.com. We're teaming up with Adorama to bring you a new series of photography tutorials called Master Your Craft right here on Adorama TV. So let's dive in. Hello, my friends. Welcome back to Adorama TV. My name is Pi. I'm gonna be your no-nonsense host through this tutorial with a tiny bit of nonsense. So look, diving straight into this. I had a chance to go out with my friend, David Suh. We will link him up. He's an awesome photographer. You should check him out. But we went to downtown Pasadena. We also did Santa Monica to do street portraits, photographing strangers. Now in this video, I'm out photographing strangers, but you might not be. You might just be shooting portraits in a city environment. You might be doing couples. You might be doing engagement, wedding. Either way, the techniques and the ideas in this video are going to give you things to fall back on when you're in these environments and kind of scrambling to get an interesting shot. Truth be told, I have never done this before. So not only was it a great learning experience, but it was interesting going up to somebody, asking to take their picture and building a rapport, shooting the images all within a 2-minute time span. We'll save kind of the how-to and my tips on that for maybe another video. What I wanted to talk about was a subject that I'm more familiar with, which is kind of how to get to great compositions and ideas that you guys can use in different locations when you're in a time crunch. See, this is something that I'm very familiar with, shooting portraits on location in a time crunch. So we're gonna work through kind of typical scenes that you might encounter when shooting street portraits, and I'm gonna give you ideas of what you can use them for. Let's dive in to number 1. Now, the very first stranger that allowed us to take their picture was Erica, and she was actually out shooting with her friend because she owns a clothing brand, which we will link up. David actually had his chance to go first, which I find to be quite nice. It gives you the nice advantage of being able to kind of look around a little bit. But truth be told, the first thing that I saw was this staircase. And staircases are things that you're gonna see all over the place in city and urban environments. So the first technique that I want to talk about is staircases, using them as posing objects, but also as leading lines. Now, when it was my turn to shoot, the first thing that I had Erica do was actually move up on the staircase. See, I wanted to get down low and take an interesting perspective using the lines and the staircase itself to frame and lead into Erica. The other great thing is that where we're shooting, this staircase is basically sandwiched between 2 buildings, right? So we have light blocked on each side, but then this overhead strip of sky, which kind of acts like a giant strip box, this giant soft strip box, which has fantastic lighting, particularly if she looks out and towards that direction. So on this image on the right side, that's exactly what she's doing, is she's looking out towards that side. I'm keeping the camera angle low, kind of shooting from the staircase going up. I would have loved to have shot this on a 35mm. I just didn't have one with me. I had a 50mm, and I'm shooting on the EOS R. I think it was the EOS R. Is either the R or the R6. It's the R. And this is at 1/320th f1.4 and ISO 100. Now, the next thing I'm going to say is when you're doing street portraits, one of the mistakes that I see people making, honestly, in any type of portraiture, is after they get a couple shots that they like, they move on way too quickly. So I got these shots. I liked all 3 of these. And we have this tendency to kind of move on, right? I don't want you guys to do that, especially when you only have 1 to 2 minutes to photograph somebody. What I want you to do instead is keep them there and look for different angles, go close, think wide, think medium, think tight, shoot the details. So after I got this shot, then I just started kind of working in towards details, right? So I'm gonna go and piece together this little series right here. Okay, so I'm trying to tell this entire story, especially when she mentions that she has a clothing brand. I want to start featuring the clothing, featuring the items that she's wearing. And that's also why we're using a lot of the kind of look away from the camera type poses. So once we finish, we get this really great set. And I'm going to show you the whole set. And I love this little final laugh of hers. Now, all of these images were shot in, I think, less than a minute or 2. In fact, if you don't believe me, look at this. Let's go first image, 4:37:06, at least the first image of these 4. This last one was 4:37, so that's like 50 seconds apart, right? Don't worry about the fact that I used to be an accountant and I can't do math. That doesn't seem to work. When you see a staircase, there's a lot you can do there. Let's go to number 2. Urban locations always have very interesting walls and textures. So when I saw this red brick wall, I knew I wanted to shoot against it. I just needed to find 2 people who were down. Well, I needed to find 1 person, but we happened to stumble into 2 people who were down. These young businesswomen were there selling chocolates for their school. So we asked them if we could take their portraits. They agreed, and of course, we bought some chocolates. And at the end, they had an interesting price proposal. 3 for 10 or 5 for 20. I had issues with it, but I still ended up getting 5 for 20. Anyway, so going back to this, when you have those interesting wall textures, I want to point something out here. Let's look at this shot versus this one. If you are shooting on a tighter lens, so I'm on a 50mm, I don't have anything wider than that. A straight on shot with just a little bit of brick like this is going to look very much like just a walk-up shot, okay? It might have looked more interesting if I had a wide angle lens and I could really showcase more of the environment, but I didn't. So what I want you guys to do is when you're featuring walls and texture is take an angle on it. Take an angle, and what that's gonna do is, especially if you can shoot at a shallow depth of field, it's gonna exaggerate the lines in the frame, and we get this shot on the right that's far more interesting. So the first thing that I'm doing with the girls was actually to photograph them kind of from this angle. And so you'll see this little set right here. Again, these entire sets are done in, I believe on this day, we were timing ourselves for 1 minute each. Something like 1 minute or 2 minutes each with them. But I did this little set of them right here. And then I was like, okay, great. And these were shot, by the way, at, let me look it up. This is at 1/250 of a second, f1.4 and ISO 100 on that same 50mm lens, okay? The other thing that I actually did with them, if you're working with 2 subjects, while I'm thinking of other shots that I want to do, oftentimes I'll fall back on things that I already know work well. Now I do a lot of couples portraits, right? So if you get 2 people, it's very easy to use one of them to help frame the face on the other person. I actually kind of like the black and whites more. So in this little sequence right here, I'm actually having one of the friends stand behind, one in front, looking down. You'll see from the behind the scenes video exactly how it's kind of set up. And then we're focusing on the person in the background while using the person in the front to kind of frame the other person's face. I love the look of these types of portraits, and it's something very simple to do. Like if you're ever, you know, out in these locations and you're really kind of grasping, you have 2 people, but you don't know what the backdrop is, just do this. Shoot it wide open, somewhere around, I think I was at like f2, what was I at? f1.4 on these ones as well. Okay, and use one person to frame the other. It's another little bonus. I told you there'd be so many more than just 5. Okay, let's go on to number 3. I want you guys to think foreground, and where possible, I want you to think story as well. So again, a very interesting thing that you can do that works really anywhere is to get close to an object and focus on one piece while allowing the other part to go out of focus. So this is Barry. And when I saw him playing his trumpet in Pasadena, I thought this would be perfect for that. I didn't necessarily have the backdrop that I would want, but what I did have was this kind of prop piece, right? His trumpet. And he is a fantastic trumpet player. So it makes complete sense from the story. So what I'm doing is I'm getting in close to him. As you can see in the video, I'm focusing on his face and allowing the trumpet to go right there past the lens. Now, I don't have to worry about anything background-wise for this. I'm basically just trying to frame him against the white wall so it's kind of clean. But this is a very easy shot to do where, once again, you don't have to worry about what's around you. Then when you've got that, so after I got these 2 shots, and I did one where it was focused kind of more on his hands, and I did one where it's focused on his eyes, where he's looking at the camera. Notice this, when I'm focused on his hands, his eyes are not going into the camera. So I actually had him look down and play the trumpet for this piece, because if he looks in the camera while his eyes are out of focus, it looks like a mistake. But here, it looks like a very interesting story piece, and I loved this shot from this sequence. The other piece that I wanted to do was I actually had Barry then stand up against the wall. I'll show you the black and white and the color version of this. But I wanted Barry to stand up against the wall, and I actually held his trumpet in front of my lens. And I shot the image using the trumpet as this foreground element that kind of was out of focus, but you can still tell what it is, but it frames him against the white wall. So just because you see a white wall doesn't mean that there's not really a lot of options to do there. A white wall is perfect for the addition of like props and other objects, or negative space even. So my last shot here was actually a negative space shot with just that white wall. And maybe I'll save that for a different one because I'm going to show you kind of conceptually ground up how I thought of this. So the point here is that you have a lot of control over the story you're telling with just depth. So with a prime lens, it really doesn't matter what the background is. And even when you're stuck with a white wall, you can still get a lot of really great stuff out of it. Number 4, urban environments can kind of be somewhat overload, but at the same time, there's a lot of objects that you can use to sort of conceal different parts of the frame. So as I'm shooting Nicole here, I really love the flare and the way it was kind of entering the lens. What I didn't like so much about this scene was all the cars that you can see directly to my left in the behind the scenes video. So what I'm doing is I'm actually standing right against I think this is the ticket machine where you buy your parking tickets. And I'm using that to frame out all of the cars. So it kind of just becomes this interesting foreground piece on this left side. And I'm leaving just a little bit of room for that sun to poke through. So urban environments are filled with just tons of different things, but you can frame to close off those items. The other piece there is going back to, again, that depth. I don't want the entire backgrounds of these shots to be in focus because there's too much there. So shooting at 1.4, shooting at 2.0, shooting at 2.8, these apertures are gonna help keep those backgrounds kind of soft and out of focus so they become less distracting. Number 5, urban environments have tons of objects that will give you reflections, even when it's just the storefront window. So this is Boris. He agreed to let me take his picture. I think he was chilling and waiting for a business meeting or something. And I was like, can I get a minute or two to take your picture? And he was totally down. So I went first this go around. And what I had him do was lean up against this kind of brick wall right there, right in front of the window, because not only is it backlit, but I knew that the window on this storefront would give me a great reflection. So all you got to do is bring your camera's lens right over to that window like you see me doing. And here we're shooting at, let's see here. Here we're shooting at 1/2 video to the second, f1.4 and ISO 400. I did a little sequence here where kind of we just get a few different shots, a few different angles, all of which I really liked, and very simple, very easy to do. I hope y'all enjoyed the video, and I hope you're walking away with tons of ideas when it comes to shooting urban portraits. If you enjoyed, I'd love for you to subscribe to the channel. Please turn on notifications because I'm gonna be back here next week, same time, same place, and I'd love to actually see you guys here. In the meantime, y'all can follow me at Born and Creative on TikTok as well as at PyJirsa on Instagram. And until next time, I'll see you back here on Adorama TV. Peace.